in the parable of Good Samaritan, which is the parable that really kind of just embodies and sets a template for the podcast. Jesus shares how this Samaritan, this unlikely hero, so to speak, shares and kind of goes the extra mile, goes a long way around. He could have, just minded his own business, has done the same things that the other people were doing. He could have just been like, you know what, I don't have time, but making time, even going back. And I think your guys' story, what you guys do, really embody that of taking a long way around. Kind of like just challenging, the assumptions maybe of like places you've been in to like continue to stay, because it's really easy to stop, to not do or work with children. Teachers burn out every year for a number of reasons. A lot of times for very good reasons and legitimate reasons. And it's a special thing for people to stay and to continue to pressing forward. So thank you for coming, for being here to share your story. And for people who are listening to the Good Neighbor podcast, thank you for listening and being in the space to be able to have this conversation. So thank you, Jamadi, and thank you, Miss Pat. And to get started, I'm going to ask, what's your name? And let's see, something fun. What is what is something that you enjoy about yourself, or maybe you like about yourself, that you wish others would notice or acknowledge?
Jomari Gonzalez. Something I enjoy about myself is like, I guess I'm a people person and I just walk to anybody and just talk to them and just, I don't know, be the light.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's one thing that I always do, that I think that distinguish my personality, I guess. So.
Pat Maley. I think what I like about myself, that I feel like it's a God-given talent, so to speak, that I have, is to be an encourager, and or even if I'm at my limit and I realize I'm not doing that as well, the good Lord always brings encouragers around me, so that to model again how I should be. So I guess encouraging.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the things you like about yourself. I know it might be, oh no, I don't want to brag or just seem proud, but in the idea of like neighboring and being a good neighbor, I think it's a fun idea, or even like challenge, to just like question, like, what is it actually like that I have, like, that I enjoy to bring to the table? Because those are the things that we share the most. And as I think about even you two, when I see you're working and doing the things you do, I see you guys encouraging and just sharing and just being so kind all the time with the people around you. And so I really appreciate that. And I can truly just attest to the fact that that's like really a gift from God. So thank you for being who you are. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yes.
The first question that I have for you all is really, what is your connection with one another? I'll ask you first, Jamadi, like, how did you get connected with Miss Pat? And then Miss Pat, for you to answer to, because I'm like sure there's different like stories and connections that you both might have. So maybe one person starts, like, oh, I remember you from 1982. I don't know if you guys met 1982, but like just something like that. And maybe that's not the first impression or time that Miss Pat like met you, but there was a connection. So I'm just curious to hear your guys' connection to one another.
Well, I met Miss Pat, and I think it was one of the orientations that we have at West 58 for the after school. And Miss Pat, she wanted to be there early, but she couldn't make it, and she made it almost towards after everybody left. But it was just her heart that she wanted to be there. She been trying to be doing this, and it didn't happen, but she still showed up, even if it was at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing her heart of willing to serve something she didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
but she was willing, her willingness just to come and had that desire of serving in the kingdom of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she couldn't do it at the moment, she did something special. She donated towards materials. So I remember that, like if it was right now, and just she said, at the moment, I'm doing something, but I'm willing, and I want to come back and be part of this. And just seeing her heart, she always say that I inspire her, but she inspired me.
Mm-hmm. And what is like this? What was the orientation for? Was it like...
It was for
The after school.
the after school, yeah. We
Mhm.
were gonna start like the new season, and Miss Pa was willing and she wanted to be there, but she still was working and kind of involved, right? And
I think I was in the subbing in the schools, and it was right kind of when COVID was relaxing a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think it was you and Miss V and Dr. B and Anthony had just been kind of helping the kids get through when they couldn't go to school.
Yeah.
yes.
So I came in on one of those afternoons. It was kind of towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little bit nervous because I think they thought maybe, or just like, oh, she knows maybe more than, like, I was more like on a teacher, you know. I was like, oh, well, I'm a retired interpreter for deaf and hard of hearing students, but I have been in classrooms, you know, many years. And so I got, like, I was really nervous when I left because I thought, oh my goodness, they think I know more than I do, I think, you know. But, it all worked out because at least I was willing to do whatever. But I saw how they just took that time. I mean, I didn't know that, you know, how very cool that they still invited the neighborhood kids in. You know, let's help them as much as we can, even though they can't be in a classroom. So I just really felt honored to even be part of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That I could help in some way.
And what was your like how did you get connected originally? Because I'm sure it didn't just like pop on there or like bam, let me just come to this random
No.
thing. Like what was
This
like,
was,
yeah.
this is always, this is the story that I tell. It's not a story. It's
Yeah,
the
go
truth.
ahead.
It was a rally CLE. The first one that I had been, our church we had gotten the notice that, hey, this event is happening and our church is going to, be involved with it. So I'm like, okay, I have no idea what this Building Hope in the City is, but I'm game. And it was the year that they always highlight someone from the neighborhood, and I just, how the whole mission of Building Hope in the City is just fabulous, and that they go into a neighborhood and then they find leaders, in the neighborhood. It's just, I just think that's just such a God-given direction, for advancement. And so it was the year that Jamari and Luis were kind of the people up on the stage that kind of talked about their, what you wanted to do in your neighborhood. And I just felt like I looked at them both and I said, I love those people. I don't even know them. I'm learning their names, but I need to find out more. And then somehow I found out that you guys were doing this. I think I might have even called and asked about, Building Hope a little bit more. And so that's why I showed up. And then I just got to meet, at the time, Miss V and Anthony, and I'm just like, okay, this is, I felt like God was really saying, like, yep, you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. And thanks for sharing like those connections. I think it's really helpful for just like people like in general as they think about what does it mean to like just serve or get started. Like we haven't even said what you guys even do. And so like if you're like, what did I do? We're gonna get there, but I think it's helpful for like just folks to like to know that, you know, when you're getting started with anything, it always, you know, there's just always a starting point. So for Miss Pat, like she heard you guys talking and kind of sharing your vision and heart for a neighborhood and just caring for others. And then, you know, she said, I want to be closer to them. And so being closer, just like showing up to this like random thing about something that like you knew that Jamadi is going to be involved with. You have no idea, like, you know, where it's at and like all this stuff, but just showing up. And I think like what I like hearing as you're talking, Miss Pat, is just really just not, I mean, there's confidence, you know, in yourself and your abilities, but at the same time, it's more so confidence in the Lord, because you didn't know like what you're going to do. You know, you're saying like how they might think that you're an expert in this. You're like, I'm not like, you know, 27, 30 year classroom teacher. And that's not what I did. But just to show up to say, man, like God is moving here. And to like to hear that and want to be close. Like, I think it's so beautiful.
And I think the willingness to,
yeah.
It was just in her heart. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let's get to it. Like, what do you guys like actually do? Like, what was this orientation like for? What is the work that you guys are involved in? And I'm curious first to hear from you, Jamadi, like how did you get started in that work and what has that like look like?
I used to volunteer when the pandemic happened to the building up in the city, just calling like the elderly people, checking on them. And then I also would translate papers for Building Hope. And then just doing that, you know, it just kind of opened my eyes and my heart of the need of the neighborhood, you know. Even though I was talking with many people I didn't know in the phone, but I think I was being like Jesus to them because I was able just to be there and listen. They were going through a lot. They were feeling stressed. And I was just being able to check on them and say, how are you? And how can we help you? And we are here for you. And they were happy. You can hear on the other end, like, they were just excited about somebody calling them, checking on them, and knowing that somebody cared for them. And just, like, me doing that volunteer also, like, blessed my life because I was being God, like, in that moment, you know, that the Samaritan woman, you know, Jesus went to her space, you know. He didn't have to do it, but he was seeing more than just that woman standing in that place. He saw her heart. And I think that's how I felt when I was going into these people's space that I didn't even know. But just like God saw their heart and he used us as his children, you know, the church, just to go and be there, just an ear to listen to them, you know. And after that, I bake from my house and I work in a cleaning company with a friend of mine. And then a little bit after the pandemic, I don't know, V and Anthony came and asked me, oh, we're trying to do this on Learning Pod. It's a part-time, it will be 2 days. Are you interested? And then I said, well, let me talk to my husband about it and hear more about what's really happening. And then when they explain it, I said, well, I don't have a degree per se. You know, I don't have like an associate's degree because when I started looking at the description,
you're like,
I was unqualified. But God qualified the unqualified, I guess. So I was like, okay, I'm just willing, And then they said, well, okay, come. And they talked to me. And then from there, I started doing the Learning Pod. And do you want me to keep going?
Yeah. Like, okay. Just like where, because I think there's some people, you know, that would know you guys, but then there's others who don't. And so, you know, Learning Pod, what was that, 2020?
2020.
And then like now we're at this point where, I mean, it's like it's changed a lot. It's a whole like program. And so, I guess before you keep going, I want to make sure that we all like know, like, where were you in that piece, Miss Patton? Did you come in during the learning pod, or did you come in after, when they like started doing more of the after school enrichment programming?
I believe I came in towards the end of when they were actually, when school was out.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they went back in March, I think I started
Understood.
coming.
That was after school, right?
Yes,
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
after school first, before and then that following, or that summer then, so that was March when everybody started going back to school. But then I worked the first year you had the summer camp, and that was life-changing for me. I have to say.
This is her third year doing summer camp. Right?
Yeah. In what ways?
Because that was where God really changed my heart. And so when I would help after school, that was only a couple days a week. And, you kind of get to know the kids, and, sometimes they exhaust you, and, but other time, and, when I look back, I'm like, this was so hard on everyone, that they didn't know. They didn't even have, didn't know how to converse with anyone else. Well, how do you feel about, how adults do? And so that's where, I had all those, I understood that part too, but I just had to, God was bringing me to a place where it finally all culminated. So then it was the first year of the 2-week camp, or the 3 weeks, but 2 weeks together. And that was where, so the first couple days of the first week, I was just, okay, doing and going along. But then there was a day that kids were wild.
Yeah.
And I was not dealing well with it. I have grandchildren of my own, but they're my grandchildren, So I remember that I actually, I think I even exited that day a little early. And I remember, your Marty and Miss V were just like, are you okay, Miss Pat? And I'm like, yes, but no, And I remember going home and, just rehashing that. Oh my gosh, how could those kids say that, or what, whatever, or, just everything that was grating, that I kept working over, over and over in my mind. But that's where, so even that night, trying to sleep, knowing that, I committed for these 2 weeks, so I'm going to go back tomorrow. I don't know. How can I do that? Asking the Lord, I don't know, Lord, what do you, how are you going to change them? Basically was my prayer. But it was just like, in the middle of the night, it was like God was just so, I even woke up because I was still like restless, sleeping. And he was just like, look, I brought you here for a reason. I never asked you to fix anyone. That's my job.
Yeah.
I only ask you to love them. And that was the change for me.
Yeah.
Because I was just, first of all, just my tension just melted away, because I'm like, that's so true. Everywhere in the Bible, love your neighbor as yourself. If I love God, then I need to love my neighbor as myself. And so with that all going, the next day, parts of it were just as chaotic as the day before, but I was different.
Yeah.
And that is just where I can't, those words are just so in my heart now that's how I just deal with, I don't have to deal. It's just a peace that's over me.
Yeah, that's really good. And even as like I hear you talk, Ms. Pat, I'm just like reminded, and of even our conversation before, like us coming on and recording of like, just the podcast, the kind of like the narrative and the story behind it, and just thinking through like the the parable of the Good Samaritan and thinking about like how like this person, and not just in that parable, like, you know, Jesus like simplified these things in other spaces. You even brought up Dramati, like when Jesus going through Samaria. And like for them, like and his disciples, that was like really going a long way around because they didn't have to. In fact, like that's him embodying and living out the parable by meeting that woman there, talking with her, going against his cultural taboos, and speaking life and truth. And so I think it's so beautiful what you're saying, Miss Pat, of just showing up and just like letting God do the work. Because like in the parable of the Samaritan, like homeboy did not like say like, here, let me make this like 10 year life plan for you post after getting out of this inn. Like the story that Jesus tells is just somebody really just showing up and just being present, literally just showing up. Like he did not say that you need this big old plan, this or that, just showing up, and like God doing the rest, and like Jesus modeling that. And so I love that. Thank you so much, Miss Pat, for just sharing that, because I think it's so important, because some people, they just don't know what it looks like, you know, just living it out. Like they hear people say, man, the Lord told me or showed me. And it's like, man, that's cool, but I don't like hear God speaking to me in those ways. But to just know that, like, you know, through scriptures, through reading, and through like really personal interactions, like God does speak, and really only speaks in a way that like you're gonna like understand. Like he speaks to everybody, but like in ways that are very tangible to people. And so, of course, like if God is speaking to Dramati, it's going to sound a lot different than you, because like, you know, first off, like your guys' first languages are different. And so like God is probably going to be using and speaking in different ways like than he would already naturally. And so it's just beautiful to hear that. So thank you, Ms. Pat, for like sharing that connection and those things, because like we talked about before, even coming on, it's so easy for folks to just stop. Like they hit a wall and they're just like, like I'm like done. And speaking about hitting the wall, like I know you had your interaction with the Lord and was talking about those things. I'm curious, Miss Pat and Dramati, like how was Dr. V, and even you, Dramati, like how did you like respond hearing these things? Because I know like you saw Miss Pat, and how did you feel? Because I'm sure like there's probably some moments you could have stopped.
Well, when I saw Miss Pa leaving, I just called her immediately. I say, Miss Pa, you okay?
Yeah.
And she said, no, I'm not. I say, but it's okay. You did the best thing to walk away and not do something that you would regret.
Yeah.
So, and then after the next day, she kind of shared what God told her. And I say, well, God always working in our lives, even in the midst of difficult times. And he always want to get the best of us. And then God revealed to her, you have to love them.
Yeah.
And I think it was not only ministering to her, but even, you know, to us too, you know, because, you know, when you deal with children that are, you know, just dealing with your own children sometimes is difficult because you have to, you know, like be the mom, and sometimes you have to be not only the mom, but you have to be the teacher. You have to be the one that have to discipline them and stuff like that. And then when you deal with children that are not yours, it's completely different.
Yeah.
But I think just setting like the tone, you know, when you're dealing with children that are not yours. For Miss Pie, it was difficult at that moment, you know. I think she was a little bit emotional and all of that, but I think she did the best decision. It was just walking out. And because, you know, when you are angry or having anger, you can do things that you're not supposed to, you know. You know, I talk about experience before. When I was younger, I used to be like really spontaneous of saying or doing things, but now I kind of either just breathe or walk away or think what I'm going to say, because words can mark people forever.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so true. These little moments that the kids have, like they see, they repeat, and they remember. And so it just, so good on like both of you all, because I know it's just not just Miss Pat, like, you know, that moment that you shared, but I mean, it's every day, personal lives with kids, and just moments like when I'm there, I'm just like, "Argh!" Like there's the other day when we went for a field trip. I think you were there cooking and stuff, Miss Pat, but we were on a field trip. We had these little Gatorade bottles that they were like kept squeezing, and, making a little spit sound, and it's like the squirting on each other. And I asked them like 7 times, like different groups, and then I got them all together and like said like, let's not do this because we're going to get like spit in people's face, and some people might not want to play that game, and it's like these things. By some people I mean me. I don't want to play that game. Don't put spit on me. And so the kids kept doing it, and then like they were like 3 of them all like at the front of the line just like squeezing it real hard, and one of the like spit just like got on my lip, and I'm not like an angry person, but there's like this guttural reaction of disgust that just
Pulling your strings.
Yeah, they pulled them that day, and I was like, "Stop!" They're like, instant. Anyway, yeah. So everybody has.
Didn't you
moments.
mention that you felt sorry about
Yeah,
it?
I did feel bad about it. It wasn't probably even that bad. Like I think I was being harsh, but it probably was actually good for them in that moment to know like you need to stop it. But yeah, I think. Yeah, like whether it's like those smaller moments or even larger moments of just like knowing that it's okay to not be okay, to ask for help, and to pause, because pushing through is not necessarily always like the right thing, and pushing through means different things for different people. Because I think about like teachers that I know or people who work with children, like the burnout is like, I have to do this because blah 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 blah. You could have went home, Miss Pat, and just been like, this is terrible. I'm not going to say anything. Or like, the people working alongside you could have been like, ooh, that's kind of bad. But they're not going to say anything. To have one another's back, to say that you're not alone, to see one another, to like provide space. I think that is so huge for any work that anyone does, whether they're like, I don't know, working in coal mines or working in computer technology, like whatever there's a problem, or if it's in the home, like taking a moment to pause, to like reconfigure, to say, I need help, I'm not okay. It's good practice to continue going forward. Like that's proper pushing through, not like you could have went back home. I got 2 weeks of this. After these 2 weeks, I'm done. That's it. I'm going to leave. I'm out. But to say like, man, God brought me here for a reason. I remember that first time seeing them and seeing their story, like that's still contagious. That's still good. I still want to see what the Lord is doing. Like that's special, and not to give up on the Lord and his work. So thank you, for sharing like that part of your story. Another thing I will love to hear from you all is, because I know like Ms. Pat, you just shared how transformative like the work has been for you. I'm curious, Jamadi, like how has working and being in this space of youth development, how's it like transformed you like personally?
When I was like, before I got married, I used to work in a center base, but it was like a school. And I did work with the school ages. I used to like take them to school, bring them back, do after life homework with them. That was kind of like a trained life. Yeah. And then after I went to school, after having kids and went back to school for early childhood, it kind of changed my perspective of how to love on kids and treat them. And also, I always say, I wish I knew this, because I would have went to early childhood before I had my own children. Yeah. I did make mistakes, like raising my daughter. I think I was like a stickler at the beginning, like really stickler with Ciliani. And then once you keep having more kids, you're more flexible. But, it always, like, it doesn't come with a booklet, but God is the one that show you, yeah, how to raise your kids, how to love them. And I think just being able to be in that space many years ago and coming back and doing, when they offer me to do the learning paths, I took the challenge. I didn't know what I was getting into. But, like just doing the learning path, we didn't have that many helpers. It was just like Anthony, me, and Patricia. And I think eventually few people will come. But just being in that space of providing a space to help the parents, because COVID season kind of put a stress in a lot of people, not only the children, but the parents and everything around, It was affecting people's work, because they couldn't go to work because they had to be with their children at home. And I think providing this space for the parents, it was also like a breathing, for them to be able to have their own space. And I just went into a space that I didn't know. And it was a challenging space because many of these kids, they knew their trick. They knew how to be in school and how to be navigating in the internet and being in spaces that we're not supposed to. So I think that was a challenge, like for me and maybe Anthony and Patricia, because you will go and turn around and try to help someone how to navigate the internet that's never been there. And when you turn around, that kid was in the internet searching something while he was supposed to be in class. So just being in that space and getting to know what was happening, it was challenging, but at the same time, it make you see how these kids needed this space too, of being there. And there was many kids that didn't even know how to search the internet. They didn't have their computers ready, or they would come and they didn't have their charger, And we were creating this space so the parents can, maybe do, whatever they had to do. And they come here and we keep them in school, active with their teacher. And sometimes they would come and they didn't even have their charger or the material that they needed, and then we had to be creative to provide something for them to keep them active, in their learning. But being in this space, I thought it was a blessing for the parents, and also like even I gonna say for me for a sake, because like I have my children at home too, and they were able to benefit from it. And I was able to still go to work with them. So it was a blessing. And then being there, even though my kids had like a different completely schedule, different than the public school. They used to be in Constellations, and they were more like in a set schedule that they knew everything. They knew, and they knew better not to do what they were not supposed to. They were okay, but then going into another space of people that you didn't know, I think it made me learn patience, treat them with love. It was many kids that they came, they were lost, and in there, like God shows like have mercy, compassion, be Jesus to them. And like I thought it was a blessing, not only like for those parents, but also for me as as a mother too, because I was able to still have my children there. When I used to go to work before that, I had to bring many people in my house to help me with my kids, like my in-laws, my mom, my daughter. And it was difficult. So I think it was a blessing for all the parents that were able to bring their kids into that space. And in that time, we used to serve the Holly kids only, Holly school. And we went and took training a little bit about what was happening. And then they came in the space and we just had to figure it out. But by the grace of God, I think it was, I don't know who came up with the idea, if it was Patricia and Anthony, but when they did this, I think it was a blessing for everybody. And just like I'm pretty sure, like I heard from many parents that bring their kids to the learning path, that it was a blessing and a breather for them.
Just having a space. I think like as I even think about our conversation, I hear a lot just one of seeing needs. Another thing I think I keep hearing is just space. And a safe space. And like being in these places, like for the space to be a safe space to like voice like challenges and things, not just like the children, but for you all, like how you mentioned, Ms. Pat, like some of the kids, the things they're going through and their experiences, they don't even know how to articulate it, and they're just kind of doing the things. And like if it wasn't for that space at that time, during COVID where everything was shut down, and then like post COVID, people recovering and like just kind of learning what it means to be like a relationship, a community in this like new normal. Like who knows? Only the Lord knows. And so just his timing for these things is so beautiful, from your guys' connections and the way that he made them happen. Or like, I even thinking about connections behind the scenes. I didn't mention it while you were telling your story, but I remember I actually got to know you and Louise from the volunteering with the senior engagement things. I didn't know that we were neighbors to that point. We had done like some walks around the neighborhood to see if there's resident leaders who like had projects and stuff, kind of how you're mentioning before, and they kind of like prompted and like as part of our LCLE process. But I did the behind the scenes, just like who's making the calls and the numbers and stuff. But I think it's just cool just how God just connects people, this interweb of like community in particular places. So that it almost seems like, and I always like think about this, but like any interaction, it's like a family reunion, with other believers and people. Rather people realize it or not, like they're children of God. And so as these connections be made, like these types of things kind of happen. Of course, we have like the ability, hindsight, like, man, Lord, I thank you for showing me this. I'm glad I stayed to be in the space to even have this conversation. But it's just so beautiful and such a blessing that God connects, that he creates spaces, and that he allows us to enjoy and like sit in those spaces to see his work get done.
Yes. And from the learning part, we still have connections, from like many families, that was going to holidays, still come to the summer camps, So.
Yeah, and it's grown a lot. Like, do you remember, Damani, by chance, like how many kids were part of the learning pot that first year, then like the first like year of like after school enrichment and camps up until like now for each year?
Well, I think for the learning pot, I'm sorry,
Okay.
we have the Losadas. I think it was a total of 10 to 12 kids we have there.
At the learning pod. And then what about when
Then we went to
school.
summer camp.
Oh, that had been like the time when you joined along Miss Pat. And how many was that?
Yeah, the first year we had like 20 kids.
I was going to say up to 20.
Up to 20.
Yeah, and I don't think I was there at that point. I
No.
came in
You
the second
came
year.
The second year, yeah. So I think maybe around 20 kids. And then after that, the after school was like, we have like 12 through 15 kids. And then the following year, we had like 35 kids for summer camp. And then in after school, we will have up to 20. And then the new year is now. And we kind of close with 15 to 20 kids again in after school. And then for the summer camp, we had enrolled like 34, 35. They all kind of came, but like, it was like every day was a different number.
Yeah.
It could be like, it was like 22 one day, then 26, then 30.
Yeah.
So, but everybody that was enrolled, they did came, but not all at once. But and then building the volunteering and the people, and they seen what we doing. They were interested and had the willing heart to come and be part of what we're doing. So.
Yeah. So you have more Miss Pats running around.
More Miss Pat on the summer camp, but Miss Pat still, she. I call her. What did I say to you, Miss Pat, last time?
I don't know.
I think I told her, I don't know, you're the bomb, Miss Pa. Because Miss Pa always, in every summer camp, she always do the first day of breakfast, which is, I think it can be a little bit challenging when you're planning a whole camp and everything that's going to happen, to be able to have somebody to come in and do that for you, because that's one less thing that you can do. And not only that, Miss Pat this year, she offered herself to help me in the kitchen every day. So that was like a plus. It was like a weight taken out of my shoulders. So she took over the kitchen and she rocked it, and I provide a few helpers for her. So
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the kids love you, Miss Pat. Like when you're not there, they're like, "Where's Miss Pat?"
I'm growing on them.
Yeah, and have grown on them. And it's really just beautiful to see. And I'll just say it again, like kids, they remember, like they see and they like repeat. And so just showing up the way that you both do, continually, when you feel nervous, when you feel like, man, I don't know if I'm even qualified. Both of you, like you both shared that, like, I don't even know if I'm even qualified, but to still show up, to say like, man, this is hard, this is challenging, but I'm going to still like show up and like waiting in the challenging spaces for Lord to like come through. That's huge. That is not an easy thing.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to share is like, we do like the Bible lesson with the kids in the after school and even in the summer camp. But I think it's a space that we had the freedom to share the gospel with the children, that many of them might not know about Jesus, or they might hear about Jesus, but they don't have an experience. And just even seeing, Dylan, for example, like he, like in that interview, you can see how God touched his heart, and his move, through this filter that we went. And he shared how maybe many kids might not have nothing, to go back to school. And they were blessed, even though, they were going to be blessed in another way. But like he saw the little things, the small things, how God can just use the small things to bless our life. And sharing the gospel with these children, I think is going to mark their life forever. Yeah. Because we planted the seed and God will do the rest. So, and also praying for the needs and whatever they're going through. We have to believe, that God is doing something behind the scenes and what he's doing for the future in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a huge thing. And even for like our own lives as we even participate, if we don't have that in focus, like there's no encouragement or even any reason to continue forward, pressing through, to like take a break or pause. I think about like cars, like the really fast ones that, race cars, NASCAR, they go on the track and they're over and over. It's the same thing over and over, around and around and around. Like, there's some dangers, some cars coming in between, tire gets jacked up, they go get fixed up really quick and they're back at it. But if there's no like guarantee that like there's even the possibility of a prize at the end, like would they continue? Probably not. Or that the prize is even like worth it. And like, of course, for us, we know that our prize is a guarantee. And like, as we're all like in this race doing this thing, everyone has like a first place prize waiting on them, going forward, pushing through, taking those pit stops together. And so, thank you both for spending time sharing a bit of your story, a bit about just the ways that you've connected, the ways that God has shown you how to just show up even when you don't even know like what to expect, and to be faithful.
Right. I that's what I just wanted to reiterate. What you're saying is that, if anyone out there is thinking, God calls us to love and he calls us to serve. So sometimes we don't, because we can't see what that looks like, just trust him that he knows he's already planned it out, how he wants us to do it. So if you were just obedient, because like we both said that we didn't know what we were doing at first, but just the obedience of it, to just love and serve, and it's always rewarding.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for your time. It's so appreciated. And I hope that anyone listening, or rather you guys listen later, or reflect, just will be able to just find so much delight, the idea of being present, to take the long way around, and to like, despite whatever challenges may arise, know that like the race, it's worth it, that your first prize like is worth it, and that God is with you.
And just to add, the Quavian, how Miss Pat started, that she say, love God with all your heart and all your soul, and then that's what when he resumed the 10 Commandments, and love your neighbor as yourself. So I think it's important, just to love, because love covers multitude of sin, and God changes everything.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you guys for being here. Hope everyone who's listening finds this encouraging. This has been the Good Neighbor Podcast, which is a podcast by Building Hope in the City and made possible by the Cleveland Foundation.
Thank you.